Hi, I'm Phil Noble, and welcome to Envision, South Carolina. We're in the beautiful City Hall chambers in Charleston talking with Mayor Joe Riley. Welcome to Envision.
Thank you, Phil. Great to be with you.
You are the epitome of Charleston. Born and raised here, spent your whole life in South Carolina. When was it you first had some consciousness that both Charleston and South Carolina were sort of different, unique? When did you first sort of figure out that this place wasn't like every place else in the world?
Probably as I got older, you know, I thought it was, I had such a wonderfully happy child life with my family and friends and, you know, and all of that. And so it probably, as I started approaching maturity, I realized that this was unusual, different, and increasingly I understood it was unlike any other place in the world.
Did you travel much outside the South or outside South Carolina?
You know, we took family trips. Those were short. Went to New York. I got to see the Brooklyn Dodgers play in Ebbets Field, thank the good Lord, and you know, and took family trips, but not far and wide. I read a lot. I loved reading as a child, and in school. Of course, I went to the Citadel, but you begin college, you're studying the world. You should be. And I spent one summer in Washington when I was in college. Worked for Congressman Rivers, which was a wonderful experience, and being a young person in D.C. But I think I traveled in books, which is a great way to travel. We can we have books, and now electronically information is available to us, so you can begin to understand the world even when you're staying at home.
That's interesting, because I mean, when I think of Joe Riley, I think of someone who is worldly and who has seen the world and knows how the world works and has a very sort of cosmopolitan view, but it came from books more than travel. I think that's fascinating.
Well, and I think, you know, for great leaders before us that traveled very little,
right.
But they traveled through books. You know, the study of history is not the learning of dates and memorization. It's a study of human nature and what people did, how they moved the world, how their spirit and creativity or courage or vision changed things. So that's how I learned, and that's how we all can learn. I'm this very moment reading John Meacham's wonderful new book about Thomas Jefferson. I've read lots about Jefferson, but you know, we keep learning. The Lincoln movie, I've read lots of Lincoln books, but again, to see Spielberg and Daniel Day-Lewis's focus on the man and the time, and there were things right then, this was, as we are taping this just a month ago, that were relevant to my job as mayor right now. A leader, being creative, not giving up, you know, being inventive. So we learn through reading and the study of history and places, and then my study of places have been through reading as well. I have worked hard to become a student of the city, not just the American city, the city of the world, a city where there are great places, a great public realm that people love and are beautiful and livable, and what makes them. And so lots of that through reading, and then talking to people, and of course being at conferences. And as mayor, I've had the opportunity to travel more, and of course have been to Europe a number of times. But this morning I was looking at a new book about important seminal development in the U.S. seaside, and the authors that contributed to that, from, you know, Leon Creer from England, or famous Americans. So I believe greatly in reading. Every time I, you know, talk to children, I encourage that. And, you know, and we should always be learning. as long as we're alive, as long as it works up there. Every day we should be learning. We should know more, have a greater insight, have a more profound understanding of the past and the opportunities of the future today than we had yesterday.
I want to talk about that sort of vision for Charleston, but first I want to, did Jefferson ever come to Charleston? I don't ever remember seeing anything for Jefferson in Charleston.
I don't believe he did. His father surveyed the Virginia-North Carolina line, so his father probably got down here a ways, but I don't think Jefferson did travel south of Virginia. He might have gone a little west, which probably would have still been in the Virginia colony then. But that's a good example. He was in Europe some, but he studied the world. You know, he knew history. He knew the Greeks. He knew the Romans.
You know, Charleston, when you became mayor, was obviously a very different city than it is today. And what was sort of your vision then, and how did you develop that vision, and how did you come to a view of a different Charleston, and what was the sort of motivation, and how did that change over time? That's about 6 different questions, but you know, what are the origins of that Joe Riley vision for Charleston?
Well, you know, Phil, maybe boil it down to this thought. When I was a child, you would come down the Cooper River Bridge entering the peninsula city of Charleston, and there was a billboard right there saying, "Welcome to America's most historic city." And I knew we were historic. I knew we weren't the most historic city. I mean, you know, Philadelphia, New York, different components. We were very historic, but that was a city touting its past is the reason for its worth. And what I was determined, what I knew that cities should be making the now the reason for its greatness and worth. That rather than that's being a place where we wanted to talk about something happening here, Washington visiting here, which is very important, that people would come here because great things are happening now. That's what civilizations do. You know, civilizations, corporations, or cities can ebb when they become mesmerized by what was done before. The families can do that. Well, the great-grandfather did this, you know. Right. And, but it's very important that what are we doing now? So my understood responsibility for Charleston was to make it a world-class city. That's a little town can be a world-class town. Nothing about, you know, about size or anything. It's just the best, excellence. So I went about the goal of restoring our city with that in mind. The best initiatives, the most beautiful scattered site public housing in the world. Prince Charles said it. Well, we did that right here in Charleston. The best shelter for the homeless, the Interfaith Crisis Ministry. There isn't a better holistic, you know, program than that. The most beautiful new waterfront park in America. And it is acclaimed as that. It was, so we were proud of the Battery, but we had a chance to do something to make it the world-class arts festival, Spoleto, that, you know, not to, just because we were great one time, and then, you know, as we helped form the concept of representative democracy, to make that really ring true now, to open this government to people of color and to women, to bring African Americans into the full participation of this city, to bring their energy and their pride and their values into it. So it was, and then in the rebuilding of the downtown, was studying the components of what makes a great city, what makes a great downtown. Understanding the public realm, it's a very important term. Cities are the public realm. That, you know, we went through a great time in American history where, a good bit of the early 20th century, where it was just private realm in cities. We lost the zeal, the understanding that you create in a city, you create a beautiful, vibrant, nourishing, inspirational place for everyone, for the richest and the poorest, and the oldest and the youngest, and the newest and the most long-time resident. So I worked hard to study how you did that, and people like William Holly White, who wrote the Organization Manual, he did the seminal study in the 60s and 70s of what people like in cities, how they move through cities, what makes a good block. Following up on Jane Jacobs' work, and I've read her work and met and studied Holly White. So in rebuilding a city, because that's what happened in America. Cities went down because people moved out. So you lost the energy of the population. And it was just kind of a collective scratch of the head. What do we do now? Oh, we got to put some stuff in here. Let's go get some stuff. Another city did some stuff, and they did some stuff like a suburban development and get some of that stuff, but it wasn't organic. It didn't fit. So what I understood was, in the rebuilding of an urban place, it has to be human scale. It has to be friendly to people. It has to, it has to work. It's an ecosystem. And I did a lot of that through reading and studying. But it was a goal that this gorgeous city that previous generations had saved from being destroyed in one way or another through progress or wars, to use what we inherited to make it a place where you didn't say, this is good because so-and-so visited here. You say, this is great because it's the best example of a beautiful, livable city.
That's fascinating. That's fascinating. Change is hard, and Charleston change is probably doubly hard. And you've made some very big changes. How do we as a state overcome that resistance to change? How did you do that here in Charleston?
Well, we're all in sales. And in a democracy, you must be doing what the citizens' hearts would desire, if fulfilled. That is, you don't go off on a tangent because you've got some personal idea that this would really be great. You've got to believe that if this is accomplished, the citizens will rejoice in it, that they will be fulfilled. Then you go about selling that, and you sell it based on going back to that core. So in all the work on racial progress, I knew that this community would be a more proud place and a more successful place if African Americans were brought into full participation and recognized. I knew that, with working on the aquarium, which was that I had to sell that carefully, what is Charleston? Why do we need an aquarium? It was a place about a conservation ethic. It would be a powerful educational resource, something unique to South Carolina and Charleston, our aquatic and marine environment, and selling the revitalization of downtown. It's because it's going to beef up the tax base. We want a place of pride. And selling Charleston Place, people worried about too many people. It's to try to remind them that cities always work well when there are lots of people doing various things. So never you never, ever, ever take for granted the citizens that you're serving, and always be asking yourself this question: is this the right thing? Is what I'm doing the best for the people, and will they 25 years from now rejoice in its accomplishment? And then you go and sell it. And as I mentioned, the Lincoln movie, I mean, he was tenaciously selling something he knew was going to be very important to our country, even though great unpopularity about it reigned. And but you go back to always being willing to second guess yourself, not in a dithering way, but okay, are you sure? Have you done your work? Have you done everything possible to make sure that this is right?
You travel the state as much as anybody, ran for governor. A lot of folks have often thought about how different this would have been if you'd been governor, but we can't look back. What would you say are the principal assets and the barriers to this state in terms of looking toward that globally connected world of the 21st century?
The assets are huge. The assets are our people. The assets are our good nature and the warm and genuine hospitality that we have for each other. The naturalness of people, huge assets. The work ethics, huge asset. The physical environment, I mean, my goodness, the state from the mountains to the ocean, to the creeks and the rivers and the streams and the vistas and the quality of the environment, the port. Our great medical university and university system, the assets are huge. What we have to do is we have to get past the old feeling that we'll take anything. The medium is okay, the best we can do. We've got to get over that. That we have to believe that in South Carolina we must excel, that everything we do, excellence is our goal, and to really put meaningfully our shoulder to the wheel in increasing the quality of and the resources allocated to public education. That's the only thing that will hold us back, is if we fail to be committed to seeking excellence in everything we do as a state, and if we don't devote the resources and energy and sustained commitment to public education. If we do those two things, this state will soar.
Why do you think we have such trouble with that? I mean, we have at times been so proud, so world class. I mean, you know better than anybody in the world what the place that South Carolina had in this world in the colonial era was one of the dominant, most important places in the whole world. And we've lost that, but it seems to me we've lost that even expectation that we can be that way. Am I right? Do you think we've lost that?
I think that some leaders haven't accepted the belief or responsibility that we can and must excel. You know, that they won't look a gift horse in the mouth, or they'll say, well, this shit's something. This state is so precious. Its future is so brilliantly wonderful. We just can't do anything that isn't aimed at excellence. I think there's a mindset that we've just got to get over. It's just, not log rolling. It is the best. That's what I've sought to do here. If there's something that we're doing that somebody else is doing it better, then why aren't we doing it better? And that's the attitude that we need to have in South Carolina.
Why do you think we've done that? I mean, is it an inferiority complex that was bred after the war? Is it some reverse psychology with the excellence that we have? I mean, what about the South Carolina character makes us accept that? Or is it leadership?
Well, leadership is key. That's why you elect people to be leaders. They should lead, not follow. Lead in the direction where the hearts and ambitions of the citizens will be fulfilled if you get there. But leaders should lead. Leaders should not be worried about the next election. They should be worried about the next generation. They should be worried about the next generation looking back at their time in office and say that they did the very best they could to make sure that now, 25 or 50 years later, we have what we have. So I think that the history is complex, and obviously the war destroyed us economically, and the terrible burden of Jim Crow, the terrible burden of slavery, and then the post-slavery Jim Crow laws. I mean, that held us back. That was tragic for our country, that it was in our country, and I think tragic for the South and South Carolina. But we're moving past that, and those burdens. I mean, Martin Luther King, as Ralph McGill, editor of the Atlanta Constitution, said, Martin Luther King freed white Southerners, just as he freed black Southerners. White Southerners of goodwill, he exposed them to their consciences. So that's past now, and I think we should have no sense of inferiority or the feelings that maybe after the war and defeat that many felt, and then the burden, as I said, of segregation. That was a burden. I mean, but very few people could look into their hearts, really exposed, and say, hey, this is good. I mean, they knew it wasn't right, but they were stuck with it. And they it took a while to break from that, but we're freed of that. And this is a relatively unspoiled part of America. The climate is fabulous. The natural environment is exquisitely beautiful and wonderful. And the ethic of the people. One thing that the war and the tough times did is create a determined work ethic to overcome and to persevere and to survive, as Faulkner wrote about another part of the South. And so we've got that. We just need to set high standards and expect of our leaders that. No more log rolling. Give us leadership.
How do we leverage the success of places like Charleston, Columbia, Greenville, particularly Charleston, Greenville, in the economic and progressive sense? How do we leverage that throughout the rest of the state? How do we take that experience and apply it to some place like Allendale, the corridor of shame? What do we do to leverage one against the other in a way that's meaningful?
It's all about seeking excellence, and you can do it in little places and little pieces. I mean, unusual example, but you look at what Darla Moore is doing in Lake City, in the heart of the PD right now. I mean, it can be done. It's just we have to not accept defeat and have to be creative. And I believe the I-95 corridor is a place of great opportunity. I mean, the country will increasingly be moving to the south for lots of reasons, including climate and the port. Huge growing asset for South Carolina in terms of job creation. And then, you know, those places that have been marked with economic difficulty and poverty, also physically beautiful. The land is wonderful, it's rich. There's a creek and a forest right nearby. Great places for people to live. So it's just don't accept anything, don't accept medium, have high standards, have high environmental standards, have high educational standards. We know that all children can learn. We know that. But we also know they got to start real young. You know, so there's lots that we can do, and I think what has been achieved, and hopefully Charleston would be seen as an example, is a commitment to excellence, and that's the principles are all transferable. The scale is different. Challenges may be more pronounced, or there may be greater assets in other places. But if we hold high standards and we persevere, then the lessons of achievement in this city or other places in South Carolina can be transferred to remote, rural, or those more economically challenged now.
Assume for the moment you were on an airplane sitting with somebody and they fell asleep and they woke up and you only had about 2 or 3 minutes before the airplane was going to land, but you found out that he or she was a world-class executive trying to figure out where to make $1 billion investment. Why would you tell them they ought to do that in South Carolina?
You do it in South Carolina because of our people. The work ethic is extraordinary. The people are nice to each other. There's a graciousness and hospitality that makes living comfortable. The physical assets of our state, the ocean, the port, the harbor, the physical beauty of South Carolina, our educational resources, you know, the Medical University of South Carolina, the University of South Carolina, the infrastructure, and the achievement of excellence that we now see in different parts of our state. We see it in our people, we see it in our young people. We see it, I'm most familiar with what we see in Charleston. It's a, you know, world #1 place to visit. World-class arts festival, world-class urban design, world-class lots of things. We see that in other parts of South Carolina as well. South Carolina is the future. If you got money to invest and you're going to be investing in people, then you bring your money to South Carolina.
Assume for the moment that I shouldn't say assume for the moment, we assume for the moment that one day your term is going to come to an end, and assume the people of South Carolina, their infinite wisdom, say, you know, we want Joe Riley to be king of South Carolina at least for 1 year. And they took you from Charleston and put you on the throne in Columbia and says, we are your loyal subjects for 1 year. What would you have us do?
Well, of course, in reality, we're servants. And so you would always be telling them what I want you to do, what have you do, is what will make your heart sing in the years to come. And so it's to say and do that we're going to make public education in South Carolina soar, that we're going to invest in our children better than, more wisely than any other place in the country. And that we're not going to, and it's not going to be a 1 year thing, we're going to put our shoulder to the wheel in doing that, and we're not going to let up until we're number one everywhere. We're number one in early childhood. We're number one in percentage of kids who graduate from college, not just high school. That's what I would do. Stay riveted to that.
Are you optimistic?
I'm an incurable optimist. It's hard to get me. I wouldn't accept defeat, and I believe that tomorrow's going to be brighter, and I feel that we all have a responsibility to do that. It's not magic, but I'm very optimistic.
What's your epitaph? What are you proudest of, aside from your family?
Aside from my family, because that's the most important, that I'd be seen as a hardworking, creative leader and public servant, and that in this historic city, I helped achieve substantial advancement in racial progress.
Race stuff is really the key, isn't it? Race and education.
It is. Yeah.
And they're so intertwined.
Yeah. And no doubt about it. And that's the, a legacy we had of just recovering from all of that when the generations of African Americans couldn't learn. It was against the law, to say nothing of not available. So education is a key. And it's the key to the future. It's the key to happiness, it's the key to success in the world of tomorrow, as it is the world of today.
One of the problems we've had in this state is that young people have often left, particularly minority young folks, because they didn't think there was the opportunity here. But that's changing changing a lot. What would be your advice to a young person thinking about leaving, thinking about their future, thinking about this state? What do you tell them?
There's no reason to leave now. My contemporaries did. The opportunities weren't here. And the commitment to excellence was not here like it is now. So stay here, sink your roots. In the meantime, get the best education you possibly can. Preschool, grammar school, high school, college. Maximize your education. And then dedicate yourself to improving your community, to make it better. The opportunities are coming our way. The jobs are going to be here. It's a great place to live, the best place to live. Stay here, be a part of it, make the future better than today. Envision, South Carolina, world class and globally connected. Started approaching maturity, I realized that this was unusual, different, and increasingly I understood it was unlike any other place in the world.
Did you travel much outside the South or outside South Carolina?
We took family trips. Those were short. Went to New York. I got to see the Brooklyn Dodgers play in Evarts Field, thank the good Lord, and and took family trips, but not far and wide. I read a lot. I loved reading as a child, and in school. Of course, I went to the Citadel, but you begin college, you're studying the world. You should be. And I spent one summer in Washington when I was in college, worked for Congressman Rivers, which was a wonderful experience.
Hi, I'm Phil Noble, and welcome to Envision, South Carolina. We're in the beautiful City Hall chambers in Charleston talking with Mayor Joe Riley. Welcome to Envision.
Thank you, Phil. Great to be with you.
You are the epitome of Charleston. Born and raised here, spent your whole life in South Carolina. When was it you first had some consciousness that both Charleston and South Carolina were sort of different, unique? When did you first sort of figure out that this place wasn't like every place else in the world?
Probably as I got older. I thought it was, I had such a wonderfully happy child life with my family and friends, and you know, and all of that. And so it probably is, you know, that the study of history is not the learning of dates and memorization. It's a study of human nature and what people did, how they moved the world, how their spirit and creativity or courage or vision changed things. So that's how I learned, and that's how we all can learn. I'm this very moment reading John Meacham's wonderful new book about Thomas Jefferson. I've read lots about Jefferson, but you know, we keep learning. The Lincoln movie, I've read lots of Lincoln books, but again, to see Spielberg and Daniel Day-Lewis's focus on the man and the time, and there were things right then, this was, as we are taping this just a month ago, that were relevant to my job as mayor right now. A leader, being creative, not giving up, you know, being inventive. So we learn through reading and the study of history and places, and then my study of places have been through reading as well. I have worked hard to become a student of the city, not just the American city, the city of the world, a city where there are great places, a great public realm where that people love and are beautiful and livable, and what makes them. And so lots of that through reading and then talking to people, and of course being at conferences. And as mayor, I've had the opportunity to travel more, and of course have been to Europe a number of times. But this morning I was looking at a new book about important seminal developments and being a young person in D.C. But I think I traveled in books, which is a great way to travel. We can all, we have books, and now electronically information is available to us, so you can begin to understand the world even when you're staying at home.
That's interesting, because I mean, when I think of Joe Raleigh, I think of someone who is worldly and who has seen the world and knows how the world works and has a very sort of cosmopolitan view, but it came from books more than travel. I think that's fascinating.
Well, and I think, you know, for great leaders before us that traveled very little,
right?
But they traveled through books.